Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to give you guys a quick unboxing of Sony's latest addition to the CyberShot family of point-and-shoot cameras. This is the DSC-HX50V. Now, this really does promise to change the game in several different ways. Granted, it is a small sensor inside, but that is pretty much the story on all CyberShot cameras, of course, except for the RX1. So you have to understand the limitations of a camera like this, but for what it presents at its current price point of a retail of around $450, and it does, by the way, launch nationally here in the US tomorrow, the 22nd, it really does promise more than any point-and-shoot pocket camera has in the past. So I'll start off with the megapixel count. It has been bumped up from the 20V and 30V, which of course, if you follow my channel, then you know that I have covered both of those cameras thoroughly. So we're now up to 20.4, and some of you may be worried about that, but considering it's the same sensor that's found in the HX300, the 50 times mega zoom monster that Sony's put out, I expect to see very similar image performance in both still and video, because again, that is the same sensor. But a big feature is we've been bumped up to a 30 times zoom now. So you now, for the first time, have a 30 times lens in your pocket, which is one of the big reasons to want this camera, in my opinion, compared to the previous generation, which topped out at 20x. So Sony pushing the envelope. Of course, also, it will go up to 60x using clear image zoom, which is a form of digital zoom. I'm not going to get into that, really cropping algorithm. 3-inch display, the same 921 dot display that you'll find across all of Sony's point-and-shoot cameras. And then, of course, the HD movie mode, which in AVC HD offers you 60p, 24p, basically some of the best video in class you're going to find from a pocket camera. And if you're coming from something like the HX9V, where in my opinion it really began, I could go back to the 5V, but the 9V really set new standards. This camera, in my opinion, is that new, really flagship model that puts Sony not back on the map, but re-illustrates that they really do lead the way. And that's because this camera has a ton of features. Now, it is based around that same NP-BX1 battery, which is currently the go-to in all of the CyberShot cameras, from the RX1, the RX100, all of the HX models. But some other additions you won't find with those cameras. You now have Wi-Fi on board, something that was found only in the 30V last generation. The 20V excluded that. You also, of course, have DLNA, and then the traditional shooting modes, but a new one is the 360-degree sweep panorama. So that's yet another feature that Sony has incorporated, which should be interesting to test out. And the form factor on this camera, very similar to the 20V and 30V, but you'll see that in a moment. Included accessories that they've designed for this camera. They do have a fitted case right there, or a jacket case as they refer to it, but that's pretty much it. The other ones are just, the standard external battery charger, because you will have to charge this camera on body, no external. And other things to note: battery life, an improvement, 400 shots. So despite the fact that you've got a small battery on board, not sacrificing battery life. Also, this camera does have GPS, something that is certainly a welcomed component to a point-and-shoot like this. So with that said, let me go ahead and get the box open so you guys can see exactly what you're going to get for that price. And it's an exciting camera because, as I mentioned, nothing else like it, and the fact that now we can actually get a 30x lens into our pocket. I know there are many of you that will say, oh, I'd rather have a larger sensor. Let's see if I can get this. I'm trying to get it on camera. But in my opinion, at the end of the day, it really comes down to what kind of user you are. Clearly, in my opinion, the RX100 is the best pocket camera on the market, but many of you do not pixel peep in the sense that you will require anything beyond what this camera will have to offer. And of course, as I spend time with it, I will give you guys full impressions, as I do with pretty much everything that ever comes to my table. So start off with paperwork, nothing unusual here. Your limited 1-year warranty with Sony. And then we've got 15% off, accessories, but more importantly, your Wi-Fi connectivity guide, because that is something, for those of you who haven't dealt with Wi-Fi in a camera like this before, you'll be glad to know you now have that ability. You've also got, of course, your general instruction manual. Let's go ahead and move to the actual camera itself. And as you can see, we've got that power brick that goes to the wall, allows you to charge the camera via USB. But let's see the actual camera. So a little bit thicker, it seems, than the 20 and 30V, but pretty much the body is identical. And you can go ahead and take a look at my videos from the past if you're interested to do a direct comparison. I don't have either of those models here to give you guys a one-for-one, but still, nice form factor, very similar build quality. You do have a built-in flash here on the top left side where the CyberShot branding is. The significant things to point out, first and foremost, you've got that multi-shoe, which if you have watched my most recent unboxing, it was for the external microphone designed for Sony's multi-shoe. So this is the first CyberShot camera, you could say, because the microphone does not work with the RX1. At least to my knowledge, this is the first camera that microphone should work with. And there are a whole host of other accessories that you can use with this, such as an electronic viewfinder, which is the same one designed for the RX1, very expensive, a retail of $450. And while many of you may scratch your head and say, why on earth would I spend the same amount of money as the camera on something like a viewfinder, I think it's certainly better to have the option. And for those of you who already own the viewfinder, you're lucky. I mean, it's a good thing to have this. So definitely better to have more flexibility, in my opinion. Now let's talk about the mode dials. Obviously, you've got the traditional mode dial that we find on pretty much all of the CyberShot HX cameras out there, but they've added exposure compensation. So again, more control, definitely Sony identifying that the user for this market wants to have more control. That's what this signifies, the multi-shoe as well as the EV control, in my opinion. You've got your traditional zoom rocker right here. Your shutter button seems to even take a cue, a little bit of a similar design from the RX1. Granted, this is not a metal release, but still interesting at first look. After all, this is the first time the camera's in my hands. Your power button right here. So everything's been redesigned. Microphone array surrounding the hot shoe, which pretty much ensures that you're not going to put your fingers on it. Certainly, at least looks like a good design cue in my opinion. As you can see, just some branding, as well as what appears to be a speaker there for video playback, in my opinion. But I won't know until I actually test it. At the bottom, we've got our HDMI out, as well as your tripod mount. And then right here, we have access to the battery and SD card slot, which of course takes SD cards as well as memory stick if you still have some memory stick cards lying around. On the right side, you can see right here, we have a multi-port, which is for charging and image transfer if you choose not to use the Wi-Fi. I'm not 100% on all of the Wi-Fi features, so I don't want to tell you guys anything that's incorrect, but of course, as I put this through the paces, you will find out. Now, as far as the back side of the camera, things are pretty much the same as what we have found on previous generations. This is probably the only part of the camera that has not taken a stark departure from what we're accustomed to. As you can see, we've got the instant movie button there, so if you're not in the actual video capture mode, you can just immediately start shooting video. Your custom button, playback, your directional pad for navigating through menus, and you can see, of course, it has multifunction, flash on the right, timer setting, and as well as your actual continuous shooting mode. Good to point out that this camera is capable of 10 frames per second, like most of its counterparts out there, at least from Sony especially. And then, of course, a menu button, as well as Sony's guide button, which will pretty much help you and try to answer any question you have, as well as a delete button, and then a dedicated button up here in the left to pop out the flash, which will not deploy right now because I do not have a battery in here, but that pretty much rounds it out. So certainly a nice looking camera. It does lend, again, most of its looks from the previous generations, but just all around you can see there are improvements from the extension in the lens, more manual controls, the multi-shoe. There's just really nothing to dislike. Of course, until we find out what image quality is like, and that should be pretty good considering, as I mentioned before, I'm expecting very similar performance to that of the HX300, which I've been using for a while now. And this pretty much just sums up what I've already told you guys. Definitely a great travel camera in my opinion, but I'll wait to give you a full verdict, obviously, with some time. Now, the balance of the box, some simple accessories, nothing crazy going on here. We've got, as I mentioned before, your standard charger that you will find with all of Sony's point-and-shoot cameras pretty much, which will permit you to charge the battery through the actual camera. As I mentioned before, you can buy an external charger, which I do recommend if you feel like you're going to need the extra ability to take more shots beyond the 400 rated life of this the BX1, excuse me. So definitely something to point out. And then of course, in order to use this power brick on the multi port that I showed you for charging, you will need to use the included micro USB cable. That's another good thing, I think, for most of you out there, because obviously most of us that have smartphones do rely on micro USB cables to charge. So certainly there are benefits to having micro USB, despite the fact that, as I always say with every video, especially pertaining to cameras, I would love to see external chargers make a comeback, but if they have to be left out for whatever reasons there may be, at least in Sony's case, hopefully, obviously, it's compensated for by the quality of the product. And then lastly, of course, your wrist strap, so that hopefully you attach this and don't end up dropping the camera accidentally as you travel. Not the best, but pretty much standard fare for Sony cameras. So that pretty much rounds out the unboxing of the HX50V. High hopes for this camera, and really look forward to giving you guys more impressions. Last thing I want to point out, not the fastest lens, obviously. You can see the aperture range right there, 3.5 to 6.3. So you're not getting anything crazy here. You're not going to be able to open this lens up wide. That's not what this is about. If that's what you're looking for, the RX100 is a better choice. But I really want to stay away from comparing these, because the RX100 is almost a year old now and really offers almost digital SLR type quality in your pocket. And that's because it has a 1-inch sensor. This camera does not have a sensor in that class, so therefore they really shouldn't be compared. But overall, like the looks, look forward to giving you guys more info. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.